Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So it's been like 2 months with the iPad 11th generation, and ever since I unboxed it, I've been using this as my daily driver. So in my video, I'll tell you how good this is and whether you need to pay more for the iPad Air or the iPad Pro models, or if this 11th generation iPad would perfectly suffice. Before we get started, the usual drill guys, please hit that like button and do subscribe if you're visiting my channel for the first time so you can support me and I can keep making these videos for you. So first, let me address the things which are missing on the iPad 11th generation compared to the other iPad models, mainly the iPad Air, as the iPad Pro is way too expensive to even compare it with the base iPad here. First thing is the display, which is quite crucial on a device like a tablet. And this 11th gen iPad misses out on the laminated screen, anti-fingerprint coating, and that wide P3 color gamut support which the iPad Air offers. First, laminated screen. Well, you need to decide if you're going to be that person who will use the iPad without a screen protector. I highly recommend against this, guys, as the iPads do get very smudgy even with that anti-fingerprint coating. This is my iPad Air without a screen protector, and you can see how it gets even with my super dry hands. And when you have a screen protector in place, laminated display and anti-fingerprint coating doesn't make much sense anymore. Even if you decide to use your iPad without that, I don't think this is a huge deal breaker. And this is coming from someone who uses iPad Pro as the main tablet. As making videos on YouTube, I had to get the iPad Pro so I can test out all those additional features it supports. Next is that wider spectrum of color support, as the iPad 11th gen only supports sRGB color palette, whereas the iPad Air offers that wider P3 color support. Again, in my extensive testing, you're going to notice the difference only if you pixel peep. Because look at all my comparison videos here, guys. To the colors on the iPad 11th gen look bad in comparison. You be the judge. Again, we are not comparing it with that amazing tandem OLED display on the iPad Pro, but that costs over £1,000, guys. So here it is in direct comparison with the iPad Air. So you be the judge and decide if these displays look any different. If you ask me, I really don't find that huge difference. Colors on the iPad 11th generation are really nice, bright and vivid, and it is a joy to watch content here. Even with the stereo speaker setup, which is decent. Granted, this is not that quad audio setup on iPad Pros, but even with that quad speaker setup, it's not going to match your external speaker system or a pair of good Bluetooth headphones. So for watching content, the dual speakers here on the iPad 11th generation get loud enough so you can clearly hear them. And you do get that decent stereo sound separation to make watching movies an enjoyable experience. The next missing thing is the M series processor. All the iPad Air models get the latest M series chip, with the latest iPad Air getting the M3 chip, whereas the iPad 11th gen only gets the A16 chip, which first debuted in the iPhone 14 Pro models, and Apple continued to use that same chip in the iPhone 15 models as well. Now, iPads, even with older generation chipsets, never felt any slower. Here's a 4K video export test putting the A16 chip on the iPad 11th generation versus the M2 chip on my iPad Pro. The iPad 11 only finished a minute slower, which, given the cost difference between these two devices, is totally acceptable. Even with graphic intensive gaming, the iPad 11th gen holds like a champ. This is Genshin Impact, and you can see how smooth it runs. For the purpose of testing, I played resource-intensive games back-to-back on the iPad 11th gen and my iPad Pro, which supports 120Hz refresh rate, and to be honest, I perform pretty similar on both these devices. We'll talk about RAM as well, as the iPad 11th gen gets 6GB compared to the 8GB which you get on the iPad Air, which, considering iPad's history, more RAM always equated to longer software updates. But even considering the 6GB on this iPad 11, I would say this device will have no issues holding up for at least the next 5 years or more. Because Apple Silicon has got to that stage where power and efficiency are at the peak levels, so even the older silicon performs very efficiently. Then storage was always a concern, especially with the iPads, but thankfully Apple has made the base storage 128GB across all their devices including this iPad 11 Gen. So 64 gigs was getting way too lower, and I'm really happy that Apple has made this decision, and the base storage now on the iPad 11 generation is a decent 128 gigabytes. Next, let's talk about software. iPad OS. There are certain features which the iPad 11 generation doesn't support. First is Stage Manager, which gives this Mac-like floating panel display which both the iPad Air and iPad Pro models support. If you think your workflow will benefit with a display setting like this, then you need to buy at least the iPad Air. Personally, besides demoing it to you guys, I never use Stage Manager as I feel the standard app full screen layout and at times split windows are much more comfortable to use. Also missing is the external monitor support in monitor's native resolution and extended monitor support. These two features turn your iPad into a Mac-like setup, and they are present only on the iPad Air and iPad Pro models. So you get full screen display here on your external monitor, and you get the option to extend the display, so your iPad could be screen number 1 and your external monitor is screen number 2. On the iPad 11 Gen, you can still connect it to an external monitor, but it will just duplicate the iPad screen onto the monitor, and it also runs in the native iPad resolution, meaning you will see black bars to the side. Once again guys, if your workflow will benefit with such a feature, then the iPad Air is the way to go. Otherwise, save yourself some cash and get the iPad 11 generation. Next, I have to mention this guys, there were certain productive apps that only were supported on the M series processors on the iPads. The popular one was Apple's own Final Cut Pro, but I was pleasantly surprised when Apple removed this restriction and optimized Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro for even the iPad 11 generation. Look at this, how smoothly it runs, and you get the ability to export your video files and projects in full 4K resolution. So this used to be missing on previous entry-level iPad models, but not anymore, which is really good news for us. And that brings us to Apple Intelligence, which is not supported on this iPad. Well, we all know the story on how Apple Intelligence fared since it launched. You either find its features really useful, or if you're not that person, then full ChatGPT app is available for this iPad too. You can make use of it for all your AI related questions and tasks. Also, an interesting thing to point out, Google's I/O just happened and they are making big news on running their Gemini AI model even on lower powered Android devices. So Apple might follow this and add support to Apple Intelligence for all their other devices too. But for now, yes, if you need Apple Intelligence, then you'll have to step up to at least the iPad Air models. And then final point is accessories, especially first-party ones. So for the iPad Pro and iPad Air, you get this magical float keyboard and Apple Pencil Pro support. Now, Apple Pencil Pro has got some cool features which really would benefit if you're an artist, but if you're not, then the USB-C pencil and the Generation 1 Apple Pencil, which the iPad 11 supports, work perfectly fine. They are very smooth and they really are one of the best styluses out there. Or you can even go for third-party ones like this ESR Geo Pencil, which is really amazing and costs only about $30. And for that cost, it supports palm detection, tilt sensitivity, and even has Find My Network support. I'll link it down below if you wish to check it out. And then Magic Keyboard is a really nice but expensive option, which again is only available for iPad Air and iPad Pro models. Apple only does this style of kickstand keyboard case for the iPad 11 generation, but ESR once again comes here to the rescue with their Rebound floating keyboard case, which offers that float angle, and it only costs about $100. Again, I'll link it down below. Also, I've done full in detail review of that case. We'll add links to that as well, so please do check them out. So in conclusion, even after considering all the missing features on the iPad 11 generation in comparison with other expensive iPad models in Apple's lineup, I feel that the 11 Gen iPad still strongly holds its ground. For light tasks like web browsing and social media, it is perfect. For content watching, it is really decent. And even if you want to push it a bit with graphical intensive gaming and 4K video editing, it handles them like a champ. And with this new iteration, Apple updated the processor, increases the RAM and the base storage while still keeping the cost same. Actually, they lowered it if you consider the UK price, which is just £329 at the moment. So, do you really need to pay more and opt for that iPad Air? Well, consider it this way. If you feel that your workflow will benefit with Stage Manager and that external monitor support, and if you feel that you need to get at least the M series processors for longevity and extra years of software support, or even if you need a bigger iPad screen, then go for the iPad Air. Otherwise, just spend that £329 or $349. Get this iPad 11th generation. It is really an amazing iPad, and you'd be surprised at how many things this base entry-level device from Apple can perfectly handle. So those are my honest thoughts about the iPad 11th generation after using it for 2 months, guys. What do you feel about this? Do you want to add anything else? Please do that in the comment section down below. Also, guys, if you're enjoying my content, please hit that like button, and for first-time visitors, do check my channel, do check my videos, and if you feel that I deserve your subscription, please hit that subscribe button. Support me so I can keep making these videos for you. And as always, if you watched my video until the end, thanks a lot for doing so. I will see you in my next one. Bye for now.